I joined. Yes, here I am.
Took long enough.
Yeah.
You missed Zach at Kroger.
You saw Zach Kroger.
No, he
I
got
accidentally
on
put
call.
Zach on. I didn't mean to.
Didn't mean to. You
Oh my.
purposely.
Didn't mean to.
I didn't mean to. What? I'm doing this from my bedroom, by the way. Ah.
Oh, come on.
Ah.
Sorry, I ended up having to run to the store because I wanted to go before the governor's going to say anything because I have a feeling the store's going to be madhouse if he does
Yeah.
end up
Oh
shutting
yeah,
things
of
down.
course it is.
So I wanted to go to the store beforehand.
Is it still crazy?
Oh, I mean, it's kind of normal.
Oh. I haven't been since this started, so I wouldn't know.
No, I mean, just shelves are kind of more empty than usual, but that's about it.
I've been telling everyone it's on the Ryan Manley Films page. You're putting it on there too, right?
That's what I'm trying to do now because
Oh, okay.
I have to log
I
on
just
to it.
making sure I was telling everyone the right thing.
Yeah, because I have to go on and I have to click live, go live or whatever.
Gotta pop my Coke Zero. Not sponsored.
Come on. Oh, because I'm broadcasting, I gotta stop
Really
broadcasting.
cold in here.
Go live. Alright, we are live, so everybody be quiet for a few minutes. Who cares? Alright. Gosh. Got like 600 things open at the moment. It's awesome. I should have been way up and running more quickly than this.
So you wanna get started with me? Don't understand that mentality. So you think that you're ready to throw? Licking your lips, so come on and let's go. I've been fighting my time, but you're forcing the line. Yeah, you're staring me down like I won't come around. And the talk in my eyes, I will tell you no lies. So I'm warning you now, I will break you down. Yeah. And you wanted to know, you can break me, you can make my way. I will stand up tall, I still stand up still. Though you try to beat me and you call me names, I said step up, boy, I will learn you pain. Yeah. So you wanna get sniped with me? Check yourself or I'll make you bleed. So you wanna get up in my face, talking your smack all over the place, and you wanted to know, well now you know.
All right, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of this daily thing that we're going to be doing. My name is Eric, and I am joined today by none other than Mr. Ryan Manley and Miss Elizabeth Ellis. You should see them on the screen currently. How you guys doing?
Hey, Eric.
Still
how are you?
hunkering down?
Yes.
All right, good. As long as everybody's hunkering down, that's the important thing. So, today's show is going to be basically a lot of discussion about filmmaking and things of that nature because, well, it's something that we're all interested in. If you're out there watching currently, you will, especially if you are a filmmaker or would like to be a filmmaker, I hope that this will help you out at least, somewhat of a sense. And, we're going to ask some questions. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about here. So let me introduce the folks who are on with me here. Again, I kind of mentioned Ryan Manley, writer, director, producer, has now written and produced and directed 3 films, Comfortless, To Bloom at Night, and Secluded. And I believe we're actually going to show a couple clips of each of, well, not Comfortless, but Secluded and To Bloom at Night. Ryan has also won a couple of awards for To Bloom at Night. So he's obviously a young filmmaker who, is it's a pretty impressive resume considering, again, how young this kid is. And then also a producer of a couple of Ryan's films. Elizabeth is this way, right? Right there. There's Elizabeth. She's waving right now. So how you guys doing today?
We are doing good. I have not left the house in a while because of this quarantine.
Yeah.
So
Are you surviving okay? Are you doing all right?
I am surviving, yes. I'm excited to talk about movies. It's something we all love, all 3 of us.
Yeah, something to get a little bit back to normal. Or at least have a feeling of normal.
Yeah.
By the way, none of this product placement has anything to do with anything. I'm eating a Pringle and Elizabeth's drinking some sort of Coke product. It's not a sponsor. But, so Elizabeth, are you doing okay up there with being entrapped into your world?
Honestly, I'm doing pretty great. Again, not sponsored. I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing, so that's been kind of nice.
That's good. Also, today's episode is not brought to you by Dos Equis, because, yes, that's what you do whenever you don't have to go to work, is you start drinking in the daytime. It's awesome. You guys will get there eventually. So, the whole idea of this...
placement.
Right. The whole idea of this was really to kind of, again, discuss, filmmaking, what it's like, and, a little bit of the processes and such. So, I'm going to lead it off with Ryan, especially because you've done a lot of writing more than myself and probably Elizabeth at this point. But what's it like really to kind of sit down and write a film? I mean, what's that process like?
It's a long process. Do you want me to kind of go through my writing process?
Yeah, just tell us what what it's like for you to write a film.
Yeah, so I kind of start with the idea. When I write, there's 2 different ways you can write. You can either have the full story laid out and have a screenplay basically of scene by scene. I don't usually go that route. I usually have just an idea and then I pull up. There's so many different programs you can use nowadays with technology. There's Final Draft and Trelby. So I download one of those screenwriting programs and I just kind of go write the script, and I try not to edit the first time I write the script. I try to just get it fleshed out, the full story, and then afterwards I'll go back and I'll edit it and eventually go over it a couple times, have a couple producers read over it that are working on the film, and then start a production.
All right, but what inspires the ideas? I mean, when you're writing, there's the technical way to write, but I'm more interested in, for you, what's the process like? I mean, how does an idea come to you, and how do you decide whether if an idea that comes to you is good enough to actually be worthy of sitting down and spending a lot of time? And when I say a lot of time, I mean it's a little different for everybody, I would think, but to be able to get it from the first page that you ever write, and that obviously comes from concept, but to sit down from basically concept to finished product is a very long process. So, but what's the idea? What inspires the creative ideas behind the subject matter?
So definitely other movies. I watch a lot of movies. I just love movies, and watching different movies inspires different ideas, as well as talking about movies with friends of mine To Bloom at Night was inspired actually by my sister. She felt there weren't many films out there that um, had a lot of serious content for teenagers, and she wanted to see a film about bullying. And I don't think these subjects are talked about much. So I want all my films to be something that has some type of meaningful message. And I think that's what I've done so far is Comfortless focused on abusive relationships. To Bloom at Night ends up focusing on mental illness and bullying. Thanks to Elizabeth, we had that idea of putting a bunch of mental illness in the script. That originally was not a main part of the script. It was originally a script about bullying, but it turns out to be an important message on mental illness.
Right. Now, Elizabeth,
And,
Ryan said that, you had this idea. What gave you the idea to say, hey, Ryan, we need to add this aspect in?
I'm gonna be honest with you. When so Ryan and I, it was at the time we had two classes back to back. We had math and language arts, and he was starting to talk about it and stuff, and I kind of looked at him, and I was just like, I'm gonna be honest, it kind of sounds cliche. Not saying that bullying is cliche or anything like that. Not trying to promote that. But I was like, what makes them tick? Like there's nothing behind that. And I'm like, a lot of times like mental illness can play a role in it,
Right.
because it's not like, oh, I'm being bullied and stuff. Like there's something behind it, and I'm like, why not? I was also doing a project at the time that um like I needed to do research on the different types of mental illness, so it kind of helped me
Right. Now, did
spring off
you,
that.
talking about that, did you, both of you, research mental illness to make sure that, you've gotten the specific kind of, the intricacies of how mental illness can affect people, what different types of mental illness could lead to different types of behaviors and things like that? I mean, how deep involved did you get when it came to the subject matter of mental illness?
Personally, for me, I so there's this book called the DSM, and everything, and they're up to volume 5 as of right now. However, when I went to the school and stuff to get the book and everything, they were like, "Sorry, we only have volume 4." And I did the best I could, googling volume 5, but they were like, "You have to pay $500 for that book." I said no. But I mean, I'm a person that also struggles with anxiety and depression, so I kind of backed it up on that as well.
So you would say you came from a little bit of personal experience
Mhm.
to ask some suggestion.
Just a
Okay.
little bit, but I mainly based it upon like these tools that are given to psychologists and stuff when they're trying to diagnose these people, and then use those type of symptoms.
Right. And Ryan, for
So,
you, like for you as a writer, what kind of research, besides obviously, you got some good advice from Elizabeth, but what kind of research did you do to make sure that, again, people, whenever it comes to films, really want realism. They don't, I mean, yes, even in the most fantasy worlds of things, they want realism, especially whenever it deals with something as serious as mental illness. So, for as a director and writer, how did you ensure that the stuff that you were writing about was accurate?
well, we made a film that obviously focuses on teenagers. So I wanted to make sure that the mental illnesses portrayed in the film, are issues that a lot of teenagers go through. So I kind of did a little bit of research on what mental illnesses show up a lot for teenagers, and there's social anxiety and depression and bulimia, and then a couple other eating disorders we looked at throughout the film, because you have the character of Isabel that is going through this. Um, she feels what's the word? She's not happy with her body image, so she goes through and starts developing eating disorders. So Elizabeth and I, we both sat down together and we tried to look at what mental illnesses come up a lot in teenagers, and we made sure that we showed those in the film. As long as I also talked to a couple other friends, I have some friends that deal with mental illness, So talking to them, I actually had them read over the script also, and they told me, yeah, this isn't as realistic. Change this, change that, etc., to make sure it's realistic.
Right. Okay. Well, it's good. I mean, it's good to know that as a writer and people that you bring in, especially producers and things, people who have real voice and say into a project, who know what they're talking about. I think that's really important. So if you're a young filmmaker and you're wondering, well, how much do I really know about something? Make sure you do the research because it's extremely important to kind of get it right. I know when we did Rejects, we have some different issues that we dealt with in that project, and that was myself and Madison went through a lot of processes to make sure that we got things right. And even in some historical fashions, to make sure that you get things right, because the worst thing you could do is put something on screen, and again, this is in a quote unquote realistic way, and have somebody come back at you with backlash to say, hey, that's not at all how this is supposed to be portrayed. So,
Mhm.
so kind of going along with that, I want to discuss a little bit of your first project, Comfortless, because it was your first project. I know you've done, a couple things before that, but let's just call Comfortless your first official project that you went out there, and didn't just like have your close friends who was helping you, but this was like your first real project. What was it like? Not so much putting it together because we already talked about that, but what was it like whenever you put out like the casting call and you were going, okay, we have these characters that we need to cast for, and I need to find this specific person that fits this role. So talk a little bit about the casting process, because I think this is important for people whenever you're going into a project. And after it's already written, it's ready to go. You found your crew. Cause that'll be a whole other discussion another time. I don't want to talk about like getting into finding crew and such because that's a whole thing. But I want to talk about more of the casting process and why it's so important. And it's gonna be kind of a two-parter for this one, and then for the other two projects, we'll talk about those a little bit later. But for right now, for casting, why is it such an important process? And talk about how you set this up.
So we live in a time now that's really great because we have all this technology, and that allows us to connect much more. And when I first put Comfortless together, I knew that it was going to be my first feature film, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't too ambitious to try to accomplish. Yes, it's a feature film, and I was a young filmmaker filming on an iPhone, but I wanted to make sure that we weren't. It wasn't too much of a struggle to put together because of a large cast, etc. So I wrote the script to make sure that there were minimal characters, and really it only focused on two characters, and I believe those are the only two that we casted because I had some friends that would play the other characters in the film. So I had those two characters that we had to cast, and there were a lot of Facebook groups I found, and that was what really got the word out there. Is I set up a my local coffee shop has a conference room, so we booked out the conference room, and we set a time, set a date, and filled out. I had like a Google Doc set up, so everyone who wanted to audition could go on and get an audition time. So I did that through Facebook, and then also backstage, I put out. I believe it was like you pay like $25, and it sends notifications to all actors, a bunch of actors and actresses in the area. So doing that was a way to really get out there and connect with other actors, cast members, even crew members. I know we don't want to talk about crew members today, but in general, I think social media is making filmmaking a lot easier for producers, and it's helping us connect more.
Right. So more on the, again, like you're actually in the room, you're sitting there, and you're having random people walk in to audition. I mean, you've probably seen them before, but they're literally walking in to audition. What's your
Yeah.
process? What do you have them do? Do you have them just do a table read? Are they supposed to memorize it before they come there? Which is better, to do one or the other? Because I've seen it done both ways. I've seen it done where some people, they give you the scripts beforehand. You come in, you already have it memorized as much as you possibly can, and then other times you have it where you just have a cold read. So for you, what do you feel is a more polished effort for what you're trying to find?
So for Comfortless, the way we did casting is everyone who signed up got a few lines that I printed from the script. I thought they were important lines from the script. So the Rebecca character, I put lines that showed a really emotional part of her and then also an angry part of her, so we could look and see how they portray both of those aspects of that character. And I had them recite those lines. I asked them, I requested for them to memorize it. Some people who auditioned didn't memorize it, and that's okay. They can read the lines, but it does show a little bit more effort when the cast member comes in and they're wanting to have it memorized. And then I also asked them to come up with a little a monologue that they could pick on their own. I said a 30 to 60-second monologue, and it could be, I gave like a list of traits of that character. So like, say this character is very angry or this character is abusive. They were able to find a monologue themselves that they felt they'd be able to portray well, have it memorized, and come in and audition with with those lines and monologue. But then for the next film, To Bloom at Night, we did the same thing for a few of the characters, and then I also had a casting director pick characters. But Secluded is the third film that we did, and Eric was a part of this casting process as well. I felt this was the best way to cast a film, is we had everyone come in at the same time, and they interacted with each other, and we set up scenes. This is an idea Eric came up with. I thought it was a great idea. I think it worked great, and the casting was spot on for Secluded.
Yeah, it's funny because kind of going back to the Comfortless, from your point of view as sitting in the room and watching these people come in and the requirements that you asked for, but on the other side, because it was actually Madison who was coming to audition for Comfortless at that time. And so from our point of view, it was really kind of interesting from more of an actor's side to kind of like wrap it all up, is that for us, we would be driving, and because it's about an hour away for us, we'd be driving, and Madison would be reciting her lines, and then it'd be giving her kind of some tips and things of ways to do it, and and kind of just some highlight points, and where do you want to get angry, because one of the last things that a casting director wants to see is somebody who is basically just one dimensional all the time. I know for me, as part of the Secluded casting and all the Rejects casting that I've done, is that for me, I don't want it to be where somebody just comes in and they live in this plane and that's it. Because when they live in that plane, that's all they got. It's like they work on their strength, but I want to see the vulnerabilities. So from a point of view on the other side, having Madison like read those lines and perform them while we were driving, and then she would have to do her little monologue, and and that was kind of her thing, and I just kind of listened and again was giving that instruction. So you can kind of see how, from the point of view of somebody who's in the room casting to somebody who is out there going to try to be casted, is kind of a neat dynamic, I would think, because again, Ryan knows what he's looking for in a character and in a way somebody portrays it, but whenever you're trying to do it from the other side, you're trying to figure out what's the best way for me to perform this. So the casting process all the way around is interesting. I know for Rejects, especially the pilot episode, was a really enormous process because we had it set up to where people could get the lines beforehand. They had them whenever they arrived, but we gave them almost all of them the exact same characters. So, I mean, it wasn't like we didn't give them a whole bunch of random characters. Even if it didn't really fit their age group or their genre, we gave them these specific characters because it gave us an apples-to-apples read on how somebody could perform, again, riding that roller coaster, so to speak. But I also know for ours, we also had an element where the people had to perform. They actually had to sing. Because ours was more of a musical type of thing. So people actually had to come in, they had to learn a song, and they'd come in and sing it for us. And then we took them over to another room, and we had an actual choreographer over next door teaching them choreography that they've never seen before, and then they would get graded, and then we all kind of came together as a collective group. And that's how we casted Rejects, was based off of several different elements. So it's kind of a fascinating thing with casting because it's not easy, and especially whenever you get these characters like Comfortless, you had two main people that you had to cast for, and then it makes it a little bit easier, but it's kind of like you have to think of the dynamic between these two lead actors. You had Madison, who played Rebecca, and you had Jared, who played Thomas. It's been so long now that I'm trying to remember these characters.
Yep.
But to make sure that they would have on-screen chemistry, and they never met each other until the first day of filming. So it's one of those things where there's whole different ways of doing casting, and I think that it's important. And this is also where producers, like Elizabeth, are important, because when producers are part of the casting process, I know Zach was in Comfortless, as an example. Myself and Dawn was in Secluded. But when it came to Bloom at Night, that was a whole other thing. You had another producer to help you with casting on that. But that's also where producers kind of come into play. People want to know, what does a producer do? Well, producers do a variety of different things. Ryan, I don't know if you want to talk about what you had your producers do. Elizabeth, if you want to talk about what you've done as a producer, kind of a thing, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, so I have the producers put together planning for filming. I know Monica, our executive producer, she helps with all the budgeting for the films. She puts together the she puts together the funding for the films, and also helps plan the call sheets. And Elizabeth was a producer on To Bloom at Night, because she helped a lot in that process of coming up with the story. And Zach also helps out with whatever's needed. So when I think of producers, I don't think, oh, they have to do these specific things, but rather kind of they just help with that whole process of putting the movie together and making it come to life.
Personally, like what I did on the set for, sorry, I keep moving. I'm doing this on my tablet. For me and stuff on To Bloom at Night, like what I really liked on how Ryan did it, and maybe this is not all directors, but I actually kind of like the idea of being able to, get the chance to do a lot of different tasks. Because I thought, oh, producers, blah, 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 they are only assigned to this task or another task. For me, there were some days on filming where I would have the clapper board, and I would do the clapping. And other times I would, be not wrangling per se, but, getting the extras and keeping them entertained. Actually, a little humorous point to add. I made balloon animals and balloon art for them, for that school scene that we did for that filming and everything.
All right. Well, there you go. Proof positive that a producer has many hats. There's no question about that. All right. So then, what is it like? It was funny because Elizabeth mentioned working, having to like kind of corral background.
That was
Which, again, I mean, think about it from a background person's perspective, is that it's not an easy thing, because a lot of times you're put into an area, you're kept there for hours, you have no idea what's going on. You can see people kind of walking back and forth every once in a while, you know what I mean? And you just kind of sit there and you're just waiting. And I mean, I know, Ryan, you've done background work yourself, but I know you just kind of sit there and you're kind of waiting, going, is it my time to go do something now? Kind of thing. And, you can literally sit there 8 to 12 hours and actually be on set for 20 minutes. That's just how it goes sometimes. But what's it like working with the main actors, like the people who actually have the speaking voice, the people who are actually going to be performing vocally, with the emotions and everything that kind of go along with it? What's it like, from as a director's point of view, working with actors, and what's kind of some things that are challenging with working with actors?
Well, it's definitely a matter of making sure that the actors come to set prepared, or else you're going to get way behind. And I know that on many of my films, we do a pretty quick filming process. So I try to connect with the actors beforehand, before they even walk into set. And then I also have a couple people that help with acting. So I have an acting coach. Her name's Dawn. She also casted, included in To Bloom at Night. She helped with that as well. To make sure they come to set prepared, make sure they know their lines, and then when they get there, we can work out the chemistry between the actual characters. But on Secluded, Eric, you were there too, we actually did some of the big scenes before we went onto set. we met at the we met with Dawn and we walked them through the different scenes, making sure they had that chemistry ready. So when we got to set, we weren't spending as much time. Of course, we have to spend some time directing the actors, but we don't have to spend as much time on set because we're trying to film at a pretty decent pace.
Right. Now, just so everybody was aware, a couple things there where Ryan mentioned was working at a rapid pace. In Indie World, your budget is extremely limited. So, whenever you do get a location, and especially if you have a location that you have to film at several times, you try to get as much done in one day as you possibly can. And it really sucks whenever you fall like really far behind. So having everybody, kind of being prepared and ready to go beforehand, when you can do a sit around, what they call a table read, you can sit around, you can give some coaching on some lines, some ways to work on things, some character stuff. Table reads are very important for that. It's not just for them to sit down and read the lines together. It's for them to kind of work some stuff out as well as a director, producers, things like that, different acting coaches and different things. There's a lot going on in a table read when people can go in the entire way and figure out who their character is, or when they're reading the lines, because at a table read, it's really one of the first times you're really getting into the whole story and the whole characterization and your own personal character. But it's also one of those things where it gives you the first real chance as a director to work with your actors, work on their delivery, who their character is, and that sort of thing. And like what Ryan said was, when you're on set, and especially on an Indie World, you can't spend like 2 full days working on one small scene. You have to work on 10 scenes in one day and try to knock it all out. I know for To Bloom at Night, we had, I think, like 7 or 8 scenes that we filmed in one day. And it can be chaos. It really can. So I think that it's extremely important to know and to utilize your time properly, especially, again, new filmmakers or indie filmmakers. This is especially for you. It's really important to utilize your time properly whenever you're not on set. Meaning you don't want to have to be going on set and coaching all the actors after they've already been coached. You don't want to have to go and coach all the backgrounds people multiple times, because that's where you're going to fall behind. We found that out on To Bloom at Night, that you're going to fall behind if you are doing it multiple times when it's not necessary to do it multiple times. Unfortunately, that's happened, quite a bit on the shoot of To Bloom at Night, but it still kind of all came together eventually, and it worked out. Just took a little bit longer than I think anybody expected it to turn out, and that's okay. But as a director, how do you pull the best out of an actor? How do you find that nailed it moment? Like, how do you work with them if they're just not quite getting it? Do you just keep shooting it over and over and over again, or do you try to show them yourself, or how do you, Ryan, as a director, try to coach them to give the performance that you want and know that they can give?
I have them. The first thing I'd like them to do is to look at the script, see the scene they're in, maybe reread it, because sometimes we get in this mind of, oh, we have these lines, we have to keep those lines memorized. But rather, what's more important is what's going on in the story. If we look at the story and the script, what's going on at this time, that really helps us bring out the best in their character. And then, of course, we do multiple takes. Sometimes we end up having to do 10 takes, and it sucks. But when you have a vision as a director, you want to make sure that the best performance comes out as they want. And I don't usually try to act it out myself. I know, Eric, sometimes you even step in and try to act it out how you think it should be done. But sometimes I will if they're not exactly if it's not exactly how my vision wants it to be.
Right. Now, as a director, do you think that it's important to have like the whole mental image of how you think the scene should go, or do you like kind of are you more of the type who will allow it to develop and decide if you like it as you see it?
That's a great question, because something about To Bloom at Night is we had to change filming locations. I believe it was 2 days before we were scheduled to film. And that completely threw off my vision of what I wanted the film to look like for the school scenes. It was a completely other building. We didn't even have a cafeteria. We had to utilize the hallway to make it look like a cafeteria for several scenes. And so you have to, especially in the indie world, you have to be able to be very flexible with what you want your vision to look like. Secluded. I wrote the script for a specific house, and that didn't work out because that person canceled on me. So Eric, we filmed at your house. So I have to be flexible with that vision. When you're on a limited budget, it's not always going to be exactly as you want it to be. If you're in that professional world, then yeah, you could be more specific with what you want that vision to look like.
No, it's
Another
go ahead, Elizabeth.
another tip I would give to aspiring directors, producers, etc., is make connections. Connections. It's gonna help you.
Oh yeah,
Eric
absolutely.
is a great example of a connection. When we went to the film festival, one of the film festivals we got into and stuff, we made a lot of good connections there, and everything. As a matter of fact, I still keep up with them. I mean, connections are very important in
Yeah,
this
no,
type of industry.
and that is absolutely true. And you don't want to ruin your connections within certain people,
Right.
because I know filming rejects, one of the biggest things that we needed to have was a school. If we didn't have a school, it just wasn't going to work. And and there's no way to fake that. There's no way to fake lockers, hallways of lockers, and classroom settings. There's no way to really fake that. So, I got extremely lucky because I just happened to have one of my he ended up being like our show coordinator and location coordinator, Robert. He was awesome, but he also works at a middle school, so we were able to utilize that connection not only to get us into the middle school itself, but also when we needed, because on rejects we needed to have a stage space, and to have a real stage space is not easy to get. And because of that connection, he allowed us to be able to connect with the high school, and the high school allowed us to film inside of their theater,
Yeah.
which was fantastic. So Elizabeth's 100% spot on, correct. Connections are everything.
Exactly.
Make them. Go to these film festivals. That's one of the biggest, most important things when you go to these film festivals, is to make the connections, so that way, hey, you had this. How can I, utilize that? And I'll owe you for something else that might happen later down the road. I've had people come up to me and have asked me, is like, well, is there any way that you can ask if we can use the school, because I have a project that I want to do and it needs a school setting. And I would pass them along over to Robert and say, hey, Robert, if you can help them out, that'd be fantastic. And and he does what he can. So it is really important to have that that connection. But it also could be one of the most difficult things, because if you're always asking people to help you out and you're never giving anything back, something to be careful with, because people will remember that. And it's such a, indie film world is a very tight knit group, as is, regular film world is a tight knit group. And once you're in, you're in. But once you're out, it's difficult to get back in. And the two are not, like, they're not together, meaning, like, if you're in the indie world, what you do here isn't going to affect you in real world, but what you do in real world can affect you in indie world, although they don't care because you're in real world, so they want you in indie world to help them out. That's why when you see a lot of film festival movies, you see a lot of them have real actors. And I say real actors, I mean, I'm talking about named actors who you would know, because it ultimately helps you, but it helps them too. So if both of you have been on a set, and I kind of wanted to just kind of find out from you, give me your best part of your day on a set, but also your worst part of your day on a set. They weren't expecting this question, so I'll give you mine while you're thinking about it. My best day on set was, it was during rejects, and we were filming the theater scenes. And again, this is super stressful because we had 5 cameras set up throughout the theater, and these kids had to perform, and they only learned it. They had videos to learn the dance performance, but they only learned it a day beforehand. So they were really kind of working on a limited amount of time to rehearse and perform together. But the best part of the day was when we brought in the background people. And this was much later at night. We've already gotten the close-ups and the mid shots and things like that, and the angles and everything. But now it was just going to be like with the audience sitting there. The coolest part was, by that point in time, they were so comfortable doing it, much like if you've ever been in musical theater and you see people who, opening night can be a little rough, but by a closing night, it was, it's usually pretty good, or usually about the third show, it's usually pretty good. It was the same kind of a thing for us. For me, that's that nailed it moment when they went out there and they were able to just kind of perform it over and over and over again, pretty much to perfection at that point. So that was really good. Worst part of a day on set was kind of personal, because it was a really bad situation, and it's something that I'm only bringing it up for the purposes of be careful what you do and say while you're on set. Even if you think that you're 100% right, be careful about what you do or say on set, because on set, not everybody knows who you are. Not everybody knows your background. They don't know, your personal life. They don't know anything about you. However, you can have people who can influence that onto a whole bunch of people, and it can ruin the whole process. This happened to me. I was basically called something that I'm not, or at least I'd like to think that I'm not, or anything. Without trying to get any kind of real specific detail, it was basically said to me, and it was from one of the people who was entrusted on the film to have a voice. And that person should know way better than ever say something like this, ever. Because not only does this person look foolish, but they tried to do it in a way to basically crush the potential career of somebody, aka me, by saying something that's so outrageously heinous that it should have never been said. And then turn around and said, oh, well, if you ever said what you said on a real set, meaning on a big budget production, you would be booted off instantly. Like, no, that's not the case. So that was the worst part of the day of set with me, is egos can get in the way. And when egos get in the way, you have to learn how to work with it and then just motor through. So that was probably the worst part. So, okay, go ahead, Ryan.
So my best day, I don't say this to sound negative or anything, but it's always, well, not always, but I always look forward to the last day of set. And the reason why is because I feel the sense of accomplishment that we have finished this movie, and I love being able to say we are finally wrapped. It doesn't have anything to do with me not liking filming. I love filming, but the last day is when like all my stress goes away, and I'm like, okay, we're finally done. We did it. Also, the last days tend to be a little bit more. We always tend to be like ahead by the last day. It seems like every set I go on, the last day is always a lot shorter than we originally intended, and it's always a shorter day. So it's nice to be able to finish up, and it's very stress free. The worst day on set is, I would agree with Eric on this, is the days when, say, producers or cast members or crew members aren't getting along. Sometimes it's for different reasons. Some days it's because it's a long day. I know some days Eric and I are on set for 15 hours or so, and it's exhausting. And by the end of the day, people are kind of like getting tired, and some people can get in grumpy moods and not get along. And for me as a director, I have so many other things that I'm trying to worry about as far as trying to get the movie done, trying to get all the acting done, get done on time. That's my main focus. And then when other things get out of hand and people aren't getting along, it just becomes very stressful for me, and it takes my stress levels out of the roof. Like, they already are very high, and that's not fun for me.
Elizabeth, did you have any great days or bad days on set?
Man, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm gonna be honest. There's always been. I always like to see a lot of positive things. I mean, I know you guys do as well. But to be honest, I can't think of a single day where I did not have a positive moment. Like when we even on our schools got changed 2 days before. It was really stressful. But I met some really fun, exciting extras. I met like a guy from Rhode Island, or he went to Rhode Island School of Design and everything. And when I was making balloon animals for everyone, that was fun. You know, And then when I was trying to do comedy, that was pretty bad, but they laughed.
Right, you
I'm,
try to
I'm
keep
not
a
lying.
light air, light fun set.
Yeah, because I could tell that everyone was just like, really like anxious and everything. And I swear, if I had a nickel, I love parents, don't get me wrong, but if I had a nickel for every single time they were like, hey, do you know when my child will go on? I'm like, I really don't know. Like, so that's why I
Yeah.
just had to keep entertaining them.
Yeah, if you ever
Um,
if you ever think that being an actor, especially background, is challenging to just sit there not knowing when you're going to go on, not knowing what this, that, the other thing. It's a whole other thing when you're a parent of somebody who's doing background or even regular, like a speaking role, because they just want to know, when's this over? When is this
Yeah.
done? Like, when am I gonna get out of here? Because they even have less to do. Because once, at least when you're a background, you go on set, you're actually like, you can see what's happening. You can interact. You can kind of like see everything that's going on. But when you're a parent, you don't really get to ever see that. You do get every once in a while, especially if you're a younger actor. Because parents have to be able to be in eyesight of their children. So sometimes they get to go up and they get to see what's going on as well. But still, for the most part, God, I don't think I could do it. I really don't. As a matter of fact, Ryan, it was going to make you laugh. One of the biggest reasons why during Comfortless that I spoke up when I did was because I was so damn bored sitting here waiting for Madison, who was the lead in this film. I was so bored. I was like, I can contribute in some manner speaking. I don't want to just sit here on my phone for hours and hours and hours and be absolutely mind-numbingly bored. So, I kind of like looked for my opportunity to kind of, jump. I'm not saying for any other parents ever do this. It was actually really bad etiquette on my part. But ultimately I've had acting experience. I've been on sets and things like that. So, and I like to think that I'm somewhat of a creative type of person. I saw an opportunity, I took it, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm casting a film with Ryan and making my own stuff too. So I mean, sometimes you just gotta roll with it, but I don't recommend it, especially on a big budget. Don't ever do that. Then you'll be gone pretty quickly. So Ryan, I want to talk about the differences between the not only your comfort level, I think is a good way to put that, but also in the quality of the product between film one to film two to film three. For you, you have three. So between when you made Comfortless to when you did To Bloom at Night and then you just finished Secluded, what is your comfort level when it comes to and your thought process and how much you've grown from that first film all the way up through the last one?
Yeah, so I want each film to be better, and I think it shows. I feel that each film I've done has gotten a little bit better. Comfortless, we had a really simplistic plot. It followed two characters the entire time. To Bloom at Night, we got very complex, and we had, I think the cast had almost like 20 or 30 people in it, if you count everyone,
Right.
plus background. That was a much bigger, ambitious project. And then Secluded, we did, we improved quality wise, we got a better camera. Eric helped with that. He directed photography. So as far as the quality of how it looks a lot better. But as you go on, the reason these films get better is because, again, going back to the point Elizabeth made, is you meet a lot of connections, and that helps you increase the quality of the product you're making.
Now, do you think that it was easier because you've done this again? You've done this three times. The first two times was multiple locations. The third time was, for the most part, I'd say 95% of it was all filmed in one location.
Yeah,
What do you think was easier, or do you think it was more difficult to just do the one location compared to the multiples?
it was so much easier to do one location because we didn't have to transport everything back and forth. I know, Eric, we just left all the equipment in
Yep,
your house
yep.
set up overnight, and then the next morning we come in and it's already there set up for the next scene. So it is a lot easier to do it all in one location.
Got it. And then again, differences. I like to find some differences between your earlier films. So when you did Comfortless, that was Madison's first project that she really had a large role in. I mean, she had a small role in something else, but this is the first film that she had a large role in. And then obviously with To Bloom at Night, a lot of the actors that were in there were more newer to the scene actors. They weren't. But then in Secluded, you actually had some actors who have done things before. I know Brian, as an example, has done things. Jamie, so this one you had more seasoned actors. So what's the differences between, besides some of the obvious, but what's some of the differences that you've noticed between working with newer actors compared to seasoned actors?
Um, that's a tough question.
I would have to. I'm sorry. I know this was for
Okay.
Ryan,
No, go ahead.
but I know. Unfortunately, because of marching band, yeah, I do wear multiple hats. I couldn't come on to the actual set of Secluded, but I was there for both Cole Reed's To Bloom at Night and Secluded, and I have to say it was like a night and day type of deal. Not that none of the actors were like horrible or were like amazing. I mean, they were all amazing, but I felt like there was more raw emotion there. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like it wasn't like, and he died. The and it wasn't monotone. Like they were getting into it. Even one of the actors or actresses had a cold that day, but I could still tell she was trying.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think that
I
for me and Ryan, and I'll let you answer, but I think for me, the biggest difference between seasoned actors and not seasoned actors is their preparations when they come on the set. Most of the time, they already know what they're supposed to do. They know the level of preparation that they need to have, and that helps a lot. I'm not saying that those lesser actors can't do the job. Sometimes you just have to take a little bit more time to pull it out of them. So, but for Ryan, what do you think?
I would say preparedness also. I love working with both newer actors and seasoned actors. Um, but working with seasoned actors is a little bit easier because they are more prepared, and sometimes when you're working with newer actors, you have to teach them some things, and sometimes they haven't even been on a film set before, and you have to go over that with them, and it takes a little more time. But there's benefits to both of them, so I enjoy working with both actors. But I will say, it is a little bit easier to work with seasoned actors.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing whenever you talk about working with older actors compared to younger actors, because older actors, again, they just kind of, they have that maturity level, they have that, that they know what they're supposed to do a little bit more. And if you have the younger actors, they want to like go off with each other and kind of socialize and things like that. The older actors, they'll kind of want to go in their own little world and and kind of live and breathe. What they're going to be doing for the day. So I think that this is kind of a good point in time. um, so if this particular Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, we are going to be showing the online premiere of Secluded. So that's going to be happening this Saturday on these pages that you're watching currently. There'll be, well, actually, no, I think that's the ticketed one, right? That's the one that you got the tickets for. Okay, my bad.
Included, yes.
So
Tickets.
so basically, if you wanna purchase it, go on the Ryan Manley Films page. He's gonna post up a link. You can buy a ticket. The reason why it's buying a ticket is literally for the purposes of putting it into more festivals and getting it out there a little bit more. Like we talked about earlier, festivals are really important, especially in indie world. But it's really important. Um, and I think it's just really a good thing. So this Saturday, if you want to come watch Secluded, we're going to do a Q&A afterwards and everything, so we'll be able to talk about that film more specific, talk about things more specific, things that might have happened on set we could talk about, and things like that. But I want to show a trailer from the or not trailer, but a clip from the film Secluded. So I want to show this clip. Ryan, you want to set this clip up if you remember what it is?
I'm sorry, what's that?
So I'm about to show this clip from Secluded. Do you want to set this clip up?
This is the dinner clip.
No,
right?
this is the 360 spin.
Oh, 360 spin. Yeah, I love this scene. So this is the cult scene. The cult actually appears a little bit later in the film. I picked this scene in particular because I don't think it really spoils much. There's a lot under the surface in the film. It starts off a little bit more simplistic, and then as the film goes on, a lot more is revealed, and it becomes a lot more symbolic. A lot more metaphors start showing up, and it gets a lot creepier as the film goes on. So I think this is a good clip that when you watch the film, it will make more sense because it's kind of symbolic. But yeah, I think it's a really creepy clip. I know at the premiere, people were telling me that Colt 360 scene was really creepy, and I even had someone come up to me and say, "You have a really good eye for horror filmmaking because that clip legitimately freaked me out." So this is just a little clip from Secluded, and I hope some of you get to see the full movie this weekend.
All right, if for whatever reason, if this is not the right one, I apologize. I'll put the right one on, but I think that it is. But all right, here you go. This is this clip from the film Secluded. Possibly the film Secluded. Well, I may have to try it again. I don't know what is going on with this thing. Gotta love it. Well, it was all running nice and smoothly, and then all of a sudden, boom. All right, here you go.
Give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood.
Rise! You've bled plenty yourself. Now it's time for you to take the blood of our newborn. For me? Yes. What did I do to deserve such love? You've escaped here with me, and now your reward will be blood. All of us must have blood. Thank you. Thank you for the peaceful life that you have given us.
Give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your mind, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your blood, give us your mind, give us your soul, give us your blood.
I give you this as a gift from my eternal soul to yours.
All right, there you go. That was pretty creepy right there. I gotta be honest. That was pretty
That
wild.
was epic.
Yeah, I remember when we filmed that. It's kind of weird because we go out there, we set all the lights up, and we did that when it was still light out, and you set up the camera, and you go, okay, this is what it's gonna look like, and then you have to instruct. This is one of those times where all those people who was doing that was all considered background, and they did a fantastic job. I know Ryan probably feels the same way, that those guys did an unbelievable job when it came to being able to act out this cult and the insanity that this cult is supposed to represent. Ryan, what do you think? I'm not hearing Ryan.
He's muted himself.
Oh.
I muted myself because there was someone outside here doing lawn work, and I didn't want it to interrupt the clip. But yeah, I thought the background actors did a great job for that scene. I completely agree with you. They didn't do an audition process. We just kind of had them sign up, and I was really impressed with what they did.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to them for what they did. Kind of going along with that. It was really kind of cool. So yeah, like I said, this Saturday night, if you want to come and see the whole film, like Ryan said, that cult scene, it's done for a reason. They don't show up a whole lot at the very beginning. It's more of just kind of the family and the stuff that they're going through, and then the cult gets introduced. But it's for a reason that they get introduced. So make sure that you, if you want to come and see it, Ryan posted up a link. Go on to Ryan Manley Films onto Facebook, and you can find the link to purchase a ticket from there. That would be super awesome of you. Final words, Elizabeth.
Final words. Sorry. About what? Sorry.
Anything. Do you have any final words for
Anything?
people?
Okay, listen. So anyone who's watching, this is going to be motivational. All right. Here's the funny thing. I want to be a doctor when I grow up. Not saying that. I'm just saying anyone can do this if you put your heart to it. It's a great stress reliever, and it's a lot of fun, and you get to work with some really awesome people and meet some really amazing friends. You know?
Yep, I do know. I've been there, I've lived it. Ryan, what do you have?
I'd agree with Elizabeth on that. It is a total blast making films. I know Eric and I talk a lot about film school, and some people believe, oh, you have to go to film school to do filmmaking. That is not the case at all. I did not go to film school. I don't even take film classes at school. I am self-taught. I learned everything on my own by meeting and interacting with people on different film sets. So really, anyone can do this.
That's not to
It's a
say you
great-
couldn't go to film school. I want to make sure that everybody
Exactly,
understands that
yeah.
you can go to film school. You will learn a lot of good stuff at film school. We just happen to believe, Ryan and myself, we just happen to believe that you're going to get a better experience if you just get out there and start doing it.
Yes. So that's what I would say on that.
I would
But-
also say get a trait.
Yes. Yes. You had your last word, so no more last words from you. Anything else, Ryan?
I don't think so, but thanks everyone for tuning in. I thought we made some really good points in this discussion. So if you tuned in a little late, I believe this will be the clip will stay up for a little bit. Is it 24
Yeah,
hours
it'll
or
be on
something?
it'll live on your Ryan Manley Films page for as long as until you take it down.
Oh.
Pretty much. So it'll
So, if
live
you-
there.
If you did tune in a little late, I saw some people pop up around like 3:30. We did make some really great points in the first half of the session as well. So definitely go back and watch it all if you're interested.
Absolutely, and like what Ryan was saying, go out there, do it. If you have questions, we're always around, so you can find us on Facebook, and you can always come and message us and say, hey, I'd like to do some filmmaking. What advice would you give me to start? And we're always here to help. We always have projects that we're working on. I have 2 of them right now that I'm working on. So I know Ryan's got a project that he's trying to get off the ground. If he can just get school out of the way a little bit more, he can maybe try to focus on it a little bit. But other than that, that's it. That's going to wrap it up for us for today. I want to thank everybody. Elizabeth, Ryan, thanks for joining. And that's going to be it for that. So everybody have a great rest of your week, and I'll probably see you guys tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Eric.